Across the vast expanse of the galaxy where 1,000 civilizations had risen and fallen, one truth remained absolute. Combat was a science perfected over millennia. The Zephyrians had their calculated strike patterns, executed with mathematical precision. The Krillian Empire deployed formations so flawless that entire star systems surrendered at the mere sight of their geometric battle arrays. The ancient Vorthak had codified warfare itself, reducing every possible conflict to predictable algorithms and predetermined outcomes. For 3,000 years, galactic warfare had been a chess game played by masters who knew every move, counter-move, and inevitable conclusion before the first shot was fired. Battles lasted mere hours, decided by superior positioning, technological advantage, and adherence to the established doctrines that had governed civilized conflict since the Great Accords. The galaxy's military academies taught these proven methods with religious fervor. Young cadets memorized the 17 classical formations, studied the sacred geometries of battlefield control, and learned to calculate victory probabilities with startling accuracy. War had become as predictable as orbital mechanics, as refined as quantum physics. Then humanity stumbled onto the galactic stage, dragging their primitive chemical rockets and crude projectile weapons, and every assumption the galaxy held about combat crumbled, like ancient parchment in a solar flare. What the galaxy had forgotten, what they had refined and calculated out of existence, was that sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one who follows the rules, it's the one who doesn't even know the rules exist. Admiral Zex Thara of the Galactic Confederation Navy stood before the massive viewing screen of her flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching the most peculiar first contact scenario in her 3 centuries of service. The human vessel, if it could even be called that, drifted in space like a collection of metal scraps welded together by an enthusiastic but untalented child. "Tactical assessment complete, Admiral," announced her tactical officer, Lieutenant Velthar, his forearms working efficiently across his console. The alien vessel measures approximately 2 kilometers in length, though its shape defies standard classification. Hull composition appears to be primitive steel alloys with what our sensors indicate are explosive devices attached to the exterior. Zexthera's elongated head tilted in confusion. In her experience, first contact with primitive species followed predictable patterns. They either cowered in fear at the sight of superior technology, immediately surrendered and begged for mercy, or launched desperate, futile attacks that were easily deflected by standard defensive measures. This vessel did none of those things. It simply waited. "Have they responded to our standard first contact protocols?" she asked. "Yes, Admiral." Their response was, Velthar paused, consulting his translator. Quote, "Howdy there, space folks. We're humans from Earth. Mind if we chat?" End quote. The bridge fell silent. Zexthera had conducted first contact with 47 different species during her career. She had received surrender ultimatums, demands for tribute, philosophical dissertations on the nature of existence, and lengthy religious sermons. Never had she received a casual greeting that sounded like someone asking to borrow agricultural equipment. "Admiral," the communications officer interjected, "they've requested permission to swing by for a visit and maybe share a drink? Our translators are having difficulty with the concept they call beer." Zexthara straightened her ceremonial robes. First contact protocols were clear. Demonstrate superior firepower, establish dominance hierarchies, and begin the standard civilization assessment procedures. She had performed this ritual dozens of times with flawless execution. "Open a channel. Visual transmission." The screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of what appeared to be the human vessel's command center. Zexthara had to suppress a gasp of shock. Instead of the sterile, efficiently designed command center she was accustomed to, she saw a cluttered space filled with what could only be described as chaos. Cables hung from the ceiling. Several crew members appeared to be consuming food while on duty, and someone in the background was engaged in what seemed to be recreational singing. In the center of this madness stood a human, a bipedal creature with pale skin, brown hair growing only on the top of its head, and clothing that appeared to be made from multiple different materials sewn together. Most shocking of all, the creature was smiling, baring its teeth in what Zexthara's experience suggested should be a threat display. "Greetings, representatives of the primitive species known as humans," Zexthara began, following standard protocol. "I am Admiral Zexthara of the Galactic Confederation Navy. Your vessel has entered Confederation space without proper authorization. State your intentions and prepare for inspection." The human's smile somehow grew wider. "Well, hello there, Admiral. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Longshot. Primitive species? That's a new one. We're just out here exploring. seeing what's out there in the big wide universe. As for inspection, sure thing, come on over. We'll put on some coffee. Zexthara found herself at a loss. The humans showed no fear, no recognition of the obvious power disparity between their vessels. The Eternal Dominance was a kilometer-long dreadnought with enough firepower to sterilize a planet. The human vessel looked like it might fall apart if someone sneezed too loudly near it. Do you not comprehend the situation? Zexthara asked. Your vessel is vastly outgunned. You have no choice but to comply with our demands. Captain Chen turned to consult with another human off-screen. Hey, Martinez, what do you think of their ship? Pretty fancy, Skipper, came a voice from somewhere in the background, all sleek and shiny. Probably cost a fortune. Bet it handles like a dream in normal space. What about weapons? Oh, definitely got firepower. Those look like plasma cannons, maybe some kind of particle beam arrays. Standard configuration for a vessel that size. Nothing we haven't seen before in the war games back home. Zexthar's confidence wavered slightly. War games? These primitives had military exercises sophisticated enough to simulate modern weaponry?
Captain Chen, Zexthara said, perhaps there has been a misunderstanding.
Are you claiming your species is capable of military conflict? Capable? Chen laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both amusement and something darker. Admiral, we've been fighting wars since before we figured out how to make fire consistently. We're probably the only species that's managed to have a global conflict while simultaneously landing on our moon. We've gotten pretty good at it over the years. Before Zexthara could respond, her tactical officer's voice cut through the conversation. Admiral, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures approaching from the asteroid field. The Admiral turned to her screens, and her blood ran cold. Emerging from behind the large asteroids were 12 additional human vessels, each one as ramshackle and improvised looking as the first, but moving with a coordination that made her veteran tactical mind take notice. Captain Chen, Zexthara said slowly, I was under the impression your vessel was alone. Oh, the Longshot? Yeah, she's the flagship of our little exploration fleet. We never travel alone. Learned that lesson the hard way back during the Martian Independence Wars. Always good to have backup when you're walking into unknown situations. The human vessels moved in what Zexthara initially dismissed as random patterns. But as she watched, she began to recognize something that made her deeply uncomfortable. They weren't following any of the standard formations taught in military academies across the galaxy. Instead, they were moving in seemingly chaotic patterns that nevertheless managed to cover all possible escape routes while maintaining overlapping fields of fire. Admiral, Belthar whispered, their formation, it's not in any of our tactical databases. Because it's not a formation, Zexthar realized with growing unease. They're hunting. On the screen, Captain Chen was still smiling. So, Admiral, about that inspection. Would you prefer to come over to our ship or should we send a team over to yours? Fair warning though, our docking procedures might be a little non-standard. What do you mean by non-standard? Zexthara asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to know. Well, we don't really have fancy docking tubes or graceful airlocks, Chen explained cheerfully. We usually just blow a hole in the hull and patch it up afterward. Works every time, and it's a lot faster than all that fancy precision maneuvering. The bridge of the Eternal Dominance erupted in shocked murmurs. The humans were casually discussing breaching the hull of a Confederation dreadnought as if it were a minor inconvenience. Captain Chen, Zexthara said carefully, you do realize that such an action would be considered an act of war? War? Chen's expression shifted slightly, and for the first time, Zexthara caught a glimpse of something behind the human's casual demeanor. Admiral, with respect, if we wanted to start a war, you'd already be fighting one. We're here to talk, explore, maybe establish some kind of diplomatic relationship, but if you're looking for a fight. She trailed off, but her message was clear. Around the Eternal Dominance, the human vessels had somehow repositioned themselves in what Zexthara's experienced eye recognized as a perfect attack formation, despite the fact that she had been watching them the entire time and could have sworn they were just drifting randomly. How did they... Velthar began, but Zexthar silenced him with a gesture. Captain Chen, she said, I believe a face-to-face meeting would be beneficial. However, I must insist on standard docking procedures. No problem at all, Admiral. We're pretty adaptable. Fair warning, though, you might want to bring some kind of environmental protection. Our ship's atmosphere is a little rough compared to what you're probably used to. Within the hour, Admiral Zexthara found herself in the most bizarre diplomatic situation of her career. The human vessel's interior was a maze of jury-rigged systems, improvised repairs, and what appeared to be recreational spaces scattered throughout operational areas. Crew members nodded politely as she passed, many of them continuing to work on various tasks while simultaneously consuming the mysterious substance called coffee. Captain Chen led her to what was presumably the ship's conference room, though it looked more like a converted storage compartment with a table bolted to the floor. "Sorry about the accommodations," Chen said, gesturing to chairs that appeared to have been salvaged from different sources. "The long shot wasn't exactly built for diplomatic missions. We're more of a figure-it-out-as-we-go kind of operation." "I must ask," Zexthara said as she carefully settled into what she hoped was a structurally sound chair. "How does your species manage interstellar travel with such improvised technology?" Chen grinned. "Same way we've managed everything else throughout history, Admiral. We make it up as we go along, fix it when it breaks, and somehow muddle through. Turns out the universe is a lot more forgiving than most people think, as long as you're willing to get creative with the solutions. But your faster-than-light technology, your navigation systems, your life support, surely these require precise engineering and standardized components?"
Oh, absolutely.
"We've got all that stuff. It just doesn't look like what you're probably used to." Chen pointed to a wall panel that appeared to be held in place with some kind of metallic tape. "That's actually a quantum navigation array. Built it myself from parts we salvaged from a crashed probe. Works great, even if it doesn't look pretty."
Zexthara stared at the panel, then activated her portable scanner. The readings made no sense.
According to her instruments, the improvised-looking device was indeed a quantum navigation array, and moreover, it was operating at efficiency levels that exceeded Confederation standards.
How is that possible? She murmured.
"What's possible? Your improvised technology. It shouldn't work. The calculations alone for a quantum navigation array require precise tolerances, standardized components, years of testing." "Admiral," Chen interrupted gently, "can I ask you something? How long has your civilization been spacefaring?" "The Confederation has maintained interstellar capabilities for over 2,000 years, Zexthara replied proudly. "And in all that time, have you ever had to jury-rig a life support system while under enemy fire? Improvise a weapon from spare parts while your ship was falling apart around you? Navigate through an asteroid field with nothing but visual references because your sensors were fried?" Zexthara considered the questions. In her experience, such scenarios were prevented through proper planning, adequate resources, and adherence to established protocols. Such situations should not arise with proper preparation. Chen's smile turned somewhat sad. "Admiral, humans have been in space for less than 200 years, and we've never had proper preparation. We've always been one mistake away from disaster, one equipment failure away from death. We learned to improvise because it was improvise or die. And sometimes we died anyway, but we kept trying." She gestured around the ship. "Every system on this vessel has been repaired, modified, or completely rebuilt at least once. Half our crew learned their jobs by accident when the previous guy who knew how to do it didn't make it home. We don't have the luxury of standardized components and years of testing because we've spent most of our time just trying to survive long enough to figure out what the hell we're doing." The conversation was interrupted by an alarm klaxon from somewhere in the ship. "This..." Chen touched a communication device attached to her wrist. "Talk to me, Martinez." "Skipper, we've got incoming ships. Big ones. They're broadcasting Confederation signatures, but they're not on our IFF list." Chen looked at Admiral Zexthara, who was already checking her own communicator. Her expression quickly shifted from confusion to alarm. "Captain Chen, it appears we have a problem. Those vessels belong to the hegemony of Kralteth. They are not allies of the Confederation. Hostile, very much so. And according to my readings, they have significantly more firepower than my vessel." Chen's demeanor shifted instantly. The casual, friendly human disappeared, replaced by someone whose eyes had gone hard and calculating. "How many ships? What kind of weapons?" 6 heavy cruisers, each mounting plasma artillery capable of destroying a ship like yours with a single salvo. "Captain Chen, I strongly recommend you withdraw from the area immediately. My vessel will attempt to delay them, but..." "Belay that, Admiral." Chen was already moving toward what Zexthara assumed was a communication station. "Martinez, sound general quarters. Get me a tactical assessment of our new friends." "Already on it, Skipper." 6 ships, heavy configuration, standard hegemony assault formation. They're moving to cut off our escape routes. Time to intercept? 18 minutes if they maintain current speed. Chen nodded and turned back to Zexthara. "Admiral, with all due respect to your tactical capabilities, I think it might be better if you let us handle this."
Zexthara felt a mixture of amusement and concern.
Captain, your vessels are vastly outgunned. The hegemony ships each mount weapons that could destroy your entire fleet.
Yeah, that's what our computers are saying too. Chen's smile was back, but it was a different kind of smile now.
Thing is, Admiral, humans don't really believe in fair fights.
If the enemy's got bigger guns, we get creative. She touched her communicator again. All ships, this is long shot actual. We've got 6 hegemony heavy cruisers incoming, standard assault formation.
Looks like they want to play. You know the drill. Make it messy, make it confusing, and make them regret showing up to our party uninvited.
The responses that came back over the communication system made Zexthara's blood run cold. Instead of fear or uncertainty, she heard enthusiasm, anticipation, and what could only be described as excitement at the prospect of combat against superior odds. Understood, Skipper. Defiance is locked and loaded. Resilience standing by. We've got that new toy we've been wanting to test. Persistence here. Time to show these space bullies what happens when they pick on the new kids. Captain Chen caught Zexthara's expression and laughed. Don't worry, Admiral. We've been preparing for this kind of situation our whole lives. Trust me, the hegemony is about to learn why humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. As if on cue, the human fleet began to move, and Zexthara watched in fascination and growing alarm, as 13 seemingly primitive vessels prepared to engage 6 of the most powerful warships in known space.
What happened next would either be a massacre or a lesson in why humanity had survived every catastrophe their violent little planet had thrown at them. The timer on the communication console read 17 minutes to contact, and Captain Chen was still smiling.
Commander Vashtar of the Hegemony First Assault Fleet stood in the command center of his flagship Dominion's Edge, reviewing the tactical display with satisfaction. 6 heavy cruisers against what appeared to be a collection of salvaged debris barely qualifying as spacecraft. The engagement would be over in minutes, possibly seconds. Target assessment complete, Commander, reported his tactical officer. 13 primitive vessels, inconsistent energy signatures. Hull composition appears to be mostly iron-based alloys. No shields detected, minimal armor plating. Weapons appear to be chemical-based projectile systems. Vashtar's mandibles clicked with amusement. Chemical projectiles. He remembered studying such primitive weapons systems in the military academy as examples of how far galactic civilization had advanced. The fact that any species still relied on such crude technology was almost embarrassing.
What about the Confederation vessel? He asked. Standard dreadnought configuration, Admiral class.
Shields at full strength, weapons powered and ready. They appear to be attempting to position themselves between us and the primitives. Admirable, if foolish, Vashtar mused. The Confederation and the Hegemony had been engaged in Cold War for decades, but open conflict was usually avoided through careful diplomacy and territorial agreements. However, the discovery of a new species represented opportunities for expansion that neither side would willingly concede. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the primitive vessels. Put it through. Let's hear what they have to say. The view screen activated, revealing the interior of what could charitably be called a ship's bridge.
A human female in mismatched clothing stood in the center, surrounded by what appeared to be organized chaos. Vashtar had to suppress laughter at the sight. Greetings, Commander Vashtar, the human said, somehow knowing his name and rank. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Exploration Fleet.
I understand you're here to claim this system for the hegemony. Indeed, Vashtar replied, allowing condescension to color his voice. Primitive species. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be escorted to processing facilities. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your vessels.
Well, that's certainly direct, Chen said, turning to consult with someone off screen. Martinez, what do you think? Should we surrender?
Probably the smart play, Skipper, came the reply.
They've definitely got us outgunned. Yeah, but remember what happened last time someone told us we were outgunned? The Tokyo incident? The Tokyo incident. Vashtar found this exchange puzzling. The humans appeared to be treating the situation as some kind of joke, despite being faced with overwhelming firepower.
Captain Chen, he said, perhaps you do not understand the severity of your situation. Each of my vessels possesses enough firepower to reduce your entire fleet to atomic particles.
Oh, we understand perfectly, Commander, Chen replied, her smile never wavering. The thing is, being outgunned isn't really a new experience for us.
We've got a long history of dealing with superior firepower through what we like to call aggressive problem solving. You are welcome to attempt whatever primitive tactics you believe might be effective, Vashtar said dismissively. However, I should warn you that the hegemony has fought and defeated over 200 different species. Your destruction is merely a matter of mathematical certainty. 200 species, huh? Chen appeared genuinely interested. That's impressive. Out of curiosity, how many of those species had experience with nuclear warfare? The question caught Vashtar off guard. Nuclear warfare was considered a primitive and barbaric practice, abandoned by civilized species once they developed more efficient energy weapons. None, he replied. Civilized species abandoned such crude methods once they achieved technological sophistication. What about biological warfare? Chemical weapons? Orbital bombardment using kinetic projectiles? Again, such primitive methods are beneath civilized military doctrine. Chen nodded thoughtfully. And guerrilla warfare? Asymmetric tactics? Suicide attacks? Honorable species conduct warfare according to established protocols and rules of engagement. I see. Chen's expression had shifted subtly, and Vashtar found himself feeling vaguely uncomfortable under her gaze. Commander, has your species ever fought a war for total survival? A conflict where surrender meant the complete extinction of your civilization? The hegemony has never faced such desperate circumstances, Vashtar replied proudly. Our military superiority has always ensured favorable outcomes. Then you've been lucky, Chen said quietly. Humans have fought dozens of wars where survival was the only victory condition. We've developed some very specific skills over the years. Before Vashtar could respond, his tactical officer's voice cut through the conversation. Commander, I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from the human vessels. Their weapon systems appear to be changing. Changing how? Unknown, sir. The readings don't match any known weapon configurations. Vashtar turned back to the screen, where Chen was speaking into a communication device. All ships. This is Longshot. Actual. Execute Protocol Omega. Time to show these folks why humans don't fight fair. The tactical display suddenly erupted with warnings and alerts. The human vessels, which had been drifting in seemingly random patterns, suddenly burst into coordinated motion. But instead of forming recognizable attack formations, they scattered in all directions like insects fleeing light. Pursuing targets, Vashtar ordered. All ships engage at will. The hegemony vessels opened fire with devastating plasma barrages, energy beams capable of vaporizing asteroids. But somehow, impossibly, the human ships weren't where the targeting computers said they should be. They jinked and weaved through space in patterns that defied tactical prediction, moving like living things rather than mechanical constructs. How are they evading our targeting systems? Vashtar demanded. Unknown, Commander. Their movement patterns don't follow any predictable trajectory. It's as if they're improvising in real time. One of the human vessels suddenly reversed direction and charged directly at the Dominion's edge. Vashtar watched in disbelief as the primitive ship accelerated toward his heavily armed cruiser like a projectile weapon itself. Destroy that vessel immediately. Plasma cannons swiveled to track the incoming ship, but at the last moment, it released what appeared to be its entire cargo bay contents into space. Chunks of metal, debris, and what looked like explosive devices. The improvised cloud of shrapnel detonated just as the human ship veered away, creating a massive interference pattern that disrupted the hegemony's sensors. Commander, we've lost targeting on 3 vessels. Switch to manual targeting. But the humans weren't finished. As the hegemony fleet struggled to reacquire targets through the debris field, the other human vessels launched their own attacks. Vashtar watched in growing horror as projectile weapons, actual chemical explosive projectiles, began impacting his ship's hulls. Report, how are primitive projectiles penetrating our shields? They're not, sir. The projectiles are. They appear to be some kind of delivery system. They're attaching devices to our hull. The tactical display lit up with dozens of small objects, latching onto the hegemony vessels. Vashtar's military training told him they were probably demolition charges, which should be easily neutralized by the ship's defensive systems. Then the first explosion occurred, and everything Vashtar thought he knew about warfare changed forever. The charge that detonated against the Righteous Fury's hull wasn't the small, localized explosion he expected. Instead, it was a chain reaction that seemed to feed on itself, spreading across the ship's shields like wildfire and somehow converting the shield energy into more destructive force. What in the name of the void was that? He shouted. Unknown, Commander. Our engineers are reporting that the human devices are somehow inverting our shield matrices, turning our own defensive energy against us. A second explosion tore through another hegemony vessel, and Vashtar realized with dawning horror that the humans weren't just using primitive explosives. They were using weapons specifically designed to exploit the advanced technology they were facing. Sir, his communications officer interrupted. We're receiving another transmission from the human commander. Chen appeared on screen again, but now she was wearing what appeared to be armored combat gear, and the casual friendliness had been replaced by something far more dangerous. Commander Vashtar, I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw from this system. Take your ships and leave, and we'll call this a learning experience for everyone involved. You dare threaten the hegemony, Vashtar snarled. We will reduce your primitive vessels to scrap metal. Commander, with all due respect, you've been trying to do that for the past 10 minutes, and it's not going particularly well for you. Chen's image shifted as her ship maneuvered, but her voice remained calm and professional. Your weapons are designed to fight enemies who follow the same rules you do. We don't follow those rules. As if to emphasize her point, another hegemony cruiser shuddered under the impact of what appeared to be a barrage of kinetic projectiles. But these weren't simple metal slugs. They were drilling through the hull and releasing clouds of something that caused the ship's systems to fail in cascading patterns. Nanobots, Vashtar's science officer reported with disbelief. They're using self-replicating nanobots programmed to disassemble our ship components and convert them into more nanobots. That's impossible. Nanotechnology of that sophistication requires... Actually, Chen's voice cut through his protests. It requires about 3 months of trial and error, a lot of coffee, and a willingness to ignore safety protocols that would make your engineers faint. Humans have been dealing with limited resources and hostile environments our entire existence. We've gotten very good at making a little go a long way. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. 3 of his 6 vessels were reporting critical system failures, and the human ships continued to dart through space like angry wasps, deploying new weapons that seemed to be improvised on the spot. Commander, his tactical officer called out, the human vessel Persistence appears to be building something. Vashtar looked at the display and felt his blood turn cold. The human ship had somehow extended mechanical arms from its hull and was assembling what looked like a massive projectile weapon using debris from the battle. How long would it take to construct such a device, he asked his engineering officer. With proper facilities and standardized components, perhaps several days. What they're doing should be impossible. On screen, the improvised weapon fired, launching what appeared to be a solid chunk of metal at one of his cruisers. Vashtar almost laughed. Surely a simple kinetic projectile couldn't threaten a heavily armored warship. The projectile struck the cruiser's forward section and kept going, punching through armor, shields, and internal bulkheads like they weren't there. But instead of simply creating a hole, it triggered some kind of reaction that caused the ship's own fusion reactor to destabilize. Glorious victory reports reactor containment failure, his communications officer announced. They're evacuating to escape pods. How is this possible? Vashtar whispered. Commander. Chen's voice came through the communication system. I'm going to explain something to you. When humans first developed nuclear weapons, we immediately started thinking about how to use them more effectively. When we invented computers, we figured out how to make them into weapons. When we developed space travel, our first question was how it could be weaponized. Another human vessel released what looked like a swarm of small objects that immediately began attaching themselves to his remaining ships. We've never developed a technology that we didn't immediately consider as a potential weapon, and we've spent thousands of years fighting wars against enemies who had better equipment, more resources, and superior numbers. We learned to win by being meaner, more creative, and more willing to take risks than anyone else. The swarm of objects began to emit some kind of electromagnetic pulse that caused his ship's systems to fluctuate wildly. The thing is, Commander, you've spent so long fighting civilized enemies who follow civilized rules that you've forgotten what warfare actually is. It's not about honor or protocol or established doctrine. It's about making the other guy dead before he makes you dead, and humans have gotten very, very good at that. Vashtar realized with horror that he was losing. 6 of the most advanced warships in hegemony space were being systematically dismantled by 13 primitive vessels that looked like they'd been assembled from scrap metal. All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance, he ordered. Commander, Chen's voice continued, you're welcome to try again anytime you want. But next time, you might want to bring more ships, and maybe some engineers who know how to deal with enemies who don't fight by your rules. As the remaining hegemony vessels limped away from the battle zone, Vashtar found himself staring at the tactical display in shock. In less than an hour, everything he thought he knew about military superiority had been proven wrong. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we're receiving a final transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. Chen appeared on screen one last time, back in her casual clothing and smiling that unsettling smile. Oh, and Commander, when you report back to your superiors, make sure you tell them that this was us being friendly. You really don't want to see what we're like when we're actually trying to hurt someone. The transmission ended, leaving Vashtar alone with the wreckage of his assumptions about warfare and the growing realization that humanity's arrival in galactic space was going to change everything. 6 months after the incident at the Kepler 442 system, the Galactic Council convened its first emergency military session in over 3 centuries. Representatives from 47 different civilizations gathered in the ancient halls of the Neutron Ring Station, each bearing reports that challenged everything they thought they understood about warfare. Chancellor Vexthani of the Zephyrian Alliance stood at the central podium, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into complex patterns that betrayed her deep anxiety. In her 600 years of diplomatic service, she had never encountered a situation that defied so many established precedents. "Honorable representatives," she began, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated formal address among her species. "We convene today to address what can only be described as a fundamental shift in galactic military dynamics. The species known as humans has engaged in 17 documented conflicts over the past 6 months, with results that challenge our basic understanding of tactical warfare." Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Admiral Zexthara, now sporting a prosthetic arm from her recent encounter with human diplomatic procedures, activated her data display. The humans have defeated hegemony assault fleets, disabled Krillian siege formations, and somehow convinced 3 separate Vorthak war clans to retreat without firing a shot. Most disturbing of all, they appear to be improving their capabilities with each engagement. "How is this possible?" demanded General Korthvar of the Titanium Imperium, his massive frame making the reinforced chair creak ominously. "Our intelligence reports indicate their technology is centuries behind galactic standards." "Their technology is indeed primitive by our standards," Zexthara confirmed. "However, they appear to compensate for this disadvantage through tactics that defy conventional military doctrine." She activated a holographic display showing footage from the Battle of Vega 7, where a single human vessel had disabled an entire Krillian patrol squadron, using what appeared to be modified mining equipment. "And sheer audacity. Observe," Zexthara continued. Instead of engaging in traditional fleet maneuvers, the human vessel approached the Krillian formation while broadcasting what our translators indicate were friendly greetings and requests for directions. When the Krillians lowered their shields to initiate standard first contact protocols, the humans deployed some kind of virus through their communication array that turned the Krillian ship's own defensive systems against them. "Preposterous," scoffed Ambassador Yeltar of the Confederation. "No species would use communication protocols as an attack vector. It violates every principle of civilized warfare." "And yet," Zexthara replied grimly, "it worked." The entire Krillian squadron was disabled in less than 10 minutes, and the humans offered to help repair the damage in exchange for detailed technical specifications and maybe some of that really good Krillian engine coolant. The chamber erupted in shocked conversation. The idea of using diplomatic channels as weapons was so alien to galactic thinking that many species lacked words to describe it. "Order," Chancellor Vexthani called. "We must address the implications of these developments." "General Korthvar, what is the military consensus on human capabilities?" The massive general stood, his armor plates clanking with each movement. "Our combined intelligence agencies have compiled extensive data on human military history. The results are disturbing." He activated his own display, showing a timeline of human conflicts stretching back millennia. Humans have been engaged in organized warfare for approximately 4,000 of their years. During this time, they have developed and deployed chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, kinetic bombardment systems, and psychological warfare techniques that most species would consider war crimes. "Surely you exaggerate," interjected Ambassador Velnath of the Peaceful Reaches. "No species could survive such violent tendencies." "On the contrary," Korthvar replied, "these conflicts appear to have accelerated their technological and tactical development. They have fought wars in every conceivable environment, on land, in water, underground, in atmospheric flight, and in space. They have developed tactics for fighting enemies with superior numbers, superior technology, and superior resources. Most significantly, they appear to view the rules of warfare as suggestions rather than absolute doctrine." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Galactic military doctrine had evolved over millennia to create predictable, manageable conflicts that minimized casualties and collateral damage. Humans seem to approach warfare as an unlimited problem-solving exercise. "There's more," Admiral Zexthara added. "Our psychological analysis suggests that humans actually enjoy combat. They appear to find creative problem-solving under extreme stress entertaining." "Impossible," several delegates declared simultaneously. "I thought so too," Zexthara replied. Then I received this transmission from Captain Chen 3 days ago. The display activated, showing the familiar figure of the human commander. But instead of the cramped improvised bridge of her previous appearances, she was standing in what appeared to be a massive construction facility. Hey there, Admiral Zexthara. Sarah Chen here. Hope you're doing well after our little chat last month. I wanted to give you a heads up about some developments that might interest your folks. The camera pulled back to reveal the scope of the facility. Humans were constructing what appeared to be dozens of vessels, but unlike their previous ramshackle designs, these ships looked purposeful, streamlined, and somehow menacing. We've been thinking about our recent encounters with various galactic civilizations, and we've realized we might have given folks the wrong impression. Those ships you've been fighting? Those were our exploration vessels, designed for long-range scouting and diplomatic contact. We threw them together pretty quickly when we first developed faster-than-light travel. Chen's smile took on a quality that made several council members involuntarily step backward. These, she gestured to the new construction, are what we build when we're actually planning to fight someone. We call them problem solvers. Each one is designed to counter specific types of galactic military technology we've encountered. Want to see how they work? The transmission cut to what appeared to be a testing range, where one of the new human vessels was engaging target drones designed to simulate various galactic ship types. Zexthara watched in growing horror as the human ship systematically dismantled each target using weapons and tactics that seemed to shift and adapt in real time. The really fun part, Chen continued as the demonstration concluded, is that each ship is also designed to be completely modular. We can reconfigure them for different types of conflicts in a matter of hours. Turns out when you've spent thousands of years fighting wars with limited resources, you get really good at making everything serve multiple purposes. The transmission returned to Chen, who was now leaning casually against what appeared to be a massive weapons system.
Now I want to make one thing absolutely clear to anyone who might be watching this.
Humanity has no interest in conquest, territorial expansion, or galactic domination. We're explorers, not conquerors. We want to learn, trade, share stories, and maybe find some good recipes for that amazing Centauri spice bread we keep hearing about. Her expression became serious. But if someone decides they want to test human military capabilities, or if they think our friendly demeanor means we're easy targets, well, she patted the weapon system affectionately. We've been preparing for that possibility our entire existence. And we've gotten very, very good at it. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. When was this recorded? Chancellor Vexthani asked. 3 days ago, Zexthara replied. Our intelligence estimates suggest they've constructed over 200 of these new vessels in the past month. How is that possible? Demanded General Korthvar. Ship construction requires months of careful engineering, testing, certification. Not if you're willing to accept acceptable casualties and learn from your mistakes, came a new voice from the chamber's entrance. Every head turned to see Captain Sarah Chen herself walking into the council chamber, flanked by 2 other humans in what appeared to be formal diplomatic attire. The chamber security system should have prevented any unauthorized entry, but somehow the humans had simply walked in without triggering any alarms. Captain Chen, Chancellor Vexthani said, recovering her composure. This is a closed session. How did you? Security systems are designed to keep out people who follow normal procedures, Chen replied cheerfully. We don't really do normal procedures. Don't worry, we're not here to cause trouble. We just thought it was time for a proper diplomatic introduction. She approached the central podium with a confidence that made seasoned military officers nervous. I understand there's been some concern about human military capabilities. That's understandable. We realize our approach to problem solving can be a bit unconventional by galactic standards. Unconventional is one word for it, Admiral Zexthara muttered. The thing is, Chen continued, humans learned a long time ago that in any conflict, the side that's willing to take bigger risks, think more creatively, and adapt faster, usually wins. We've built our entire military philosophy around that principle. She activated a personal data display showing a detailed breakdown of human military organization. We don't have standardized tactics because standardized tactics can be predicted and countered. We don't use uniform equipment because uniform equipment has uniform weaknesses. Every human military unit is trained to be self-sufficient, adaptable, and capable of improvising solutions to problems we haven't encountered yet. The display shifted to show human military training exercises that looked more like elaborate problem-solving games than traditional drills. Our soldiers don't just learn how to fight, they learn how to think, how to turn any situation to their advantage, how to make weapons from whatever's available, how to exploit enemy assumptions and expectations. This is precisely what concerns us, Chancellor Vexthani said, Such unpredictable military capabilities destabilize the entire galactic balance of power. Actually, Chen replied, we prefer to think of ourselves as a stabilizing influence. Think about it. For thousands of years, galactic conflicts have been decided by whoever has the biggest ships and the most advanced weapons. That creates an arms race where everyone keeps building bigger and more destructive tools.
She gestured to the assembled delegates. But if military superiority can be countered by creativity, adaptation, and tactical flexibility, then suddenly the advantage goes to whoever can think fastest, not whoever can build the biggest guns. That levels the playing field considerably and gives humans a permanent advantage, General Korthvar pointed out. Only if we're the only ones willing to think outside established doctrine, Chen replied. We'd actually prefer it if everyone started being more creative in their approach to conflicts. Makes things more interesting, and it means we might actually learn something new from our opponents. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. Here's what we're proposing, she said. Humanity wants to join the galactic community as an equal partner. We want to trade, explore, share knowledge, and contribute to the common good. But we're not going to pretend to be something we're not. And what are you exactly? Chancellor Vexthany asked. We're the species that looks at any problem and asks how can we solve this, instead of why can't this be solved? Chen replied. We're the ones who see a bigger, stronger enemy and immediately start thinking about how to turn their strengths into weaknesses. We're the species that has survived everything our hostile planet could throw at us, by being more stubborn, more adaptable, and more creative than any reasonable species should be. She smiled, and for the first time it didn't seem threatening. We're also the species that invented music, art, literature, and 1,000 different ways to make alcohol from whatever's growing nearby. We're explorers, inventors, storytellers, and dreamers. The fact that we're also really good at fighting is just a byproduct of having to survive on a planet where everything was trying to kill us. The chamber remained silent as the delegates processed this information. So here's our offer, Chen continued. We'll share our technology, our knowledge, and our perspectives with anyone who wants to learn. We'll help solve problems that have stumped galactic civilization for centuries. We'll contribute to exploration, research, and peaceful development. And in return? Admiral Zexthara asked. In return, you accept that the galaxy has changed.
The old rules about military superiority and technological dominance don't work anymore because now there's a species that doesn't follow those rules. Instead of seeing that as a threat, maybe you could see it as an opportunity.
She gestured to her display, which now showed images of human scientists working alongside aliens from various species. We've already started collaborative projects with several civilizations. Turns out when you combine human creativity with galactic technical knowledge, you can solve problems nobody thought were solvable. We've helped the Centaurians develop new agricultural techniques that increased their food production by 300%. We've shown the Rigelians how to adapt their manufacturing processes to work with 1/10 of the energy they were using before.
And militarily? General Korthvar asked.
Militarily, we're willing to serve as a deterrent against anyone who thinks conquest is easier than cooperation, Chen replied. The galaxy has been peaceful for centuries, partly because everyone knows where they stand relative to each other. Now everyone knows that no matter how advanced your technology is, there's always someone who might find a way to turn it against you. She looked directly at each of the military representatives.
That doesn't mean we want to fight anyone.
It means we want everyone to think twice before starting fights they can't finish. And maybe, just maybe, we can convince people that cooperation is more productive than conflict. Chancellor Vexthany considered this for several long moments. Captain Chen, assuming the Council accepts your proposal, what guarantees do we have that humanity will honor peaceful agreements? The same guarantee you have with anyone else, Chen replied. None whatsoever. But consider this. We've had the ability to cause serious problems for the last 6 months. And instead, we've been trying to establish diplomatic relations and contribute to galactic society. We could have shown up and started conquering systems, but instead we showed up and asked if anyone wanted to trade recipes. She paused, then added, besides, warfare is expensive, destructive, and honestly kind of boring when you're good enough at it to win consistently. We'd much rather spend our time exploring strange new worlds, learning about different cultures, and figuring out how the universe works. And if someone attacks human interests? Chen's smile returned, but this time it carried a hint of steel. Then they'll discover why humans have a saying. Don't start none. Won't be none. We're peaceful by choice, not because we lack other options. The council chamber fell silent again as delegates considered the implications of humanity's proposal. Finally, Chancellor Vexthany spoke.
Captain Chen, the Council will need time to deliberate. However, I believe I speak for many when I say that your species has already demonstrated that the galaxy must adapt to new realities. Change is never easy, Chen acknowledged.
But it's usually worth it in the end. The galaxy's been stable for centuries, but stable can also mean stagnant. Maybe it's time for some new ideas. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Admiral Zexthera? My engineers wanted me to ask if you'd be interested in collaborating on some defensive system improvements. They've got some ideas about adaptive shielding that might interest your technical staff.
You know, assuming you're willing to work with people who think impossible is just another word for nobody's tried hard enough yet. As the human delegation departed, leaving the council to grapple with a new galactic reality, one thing was certain: the age of predictable warfare was over, and the age of human ingenuity had begun.